My name is Mary Jean Marshall. I was born September 3rd, 1946 in Glenwood, Minnesota.
Okay. Now, this interview is by Scott Davis, and this is for the Cane Hill Oral History Project, and we just want to be sure that you understand that we will reproduce these interviews, and we're asking for your permission.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you. Tell me about your parents.
My mother was Susan Louise McClellan. She married my father, Joseph Howard McArdle. After 3 dates and 3 weeks, he was in the Army, and they moved to Minnesota, and that's where I was born, along with a sister and a brother.
When did you first move to Cane Hill?
1951.
1951. Tell me about your earliest memories of Cane Hill.
Well, it was a very close-knit community. We were kin to practically everyone in town, and if we weren't, we called them aunt or uncle or cousin, and it was just real neat. Everything was kind of centered around the church, and we had lots of company. Mother was kind of crippled, and so she didn't get out too much, but we lived on the main road, and people just stopped by all the time.
Where'd y'all live?
We lived next to the church on the south side.
Okay. Tell me about your routines at home when you were growing up in Cane Hill or living in Cane Hill. What were your routines?
Well, get up and have breakfast and go outside and play. We played outside an awful lot, except when it was raining. And after we got a little older and a little more adventuresome, we spent a lot of time at the creek and a lot of time on Conrad's Hill. Conrad Russell, that used to own the hill across from everything. And he had 2 horses, Fanny and Polly, and he used to bring the milk. He milked by hand, and he'd bring his milk cans down and set them in the creek, or the little branch that ran under the road. And we'd rush up to the hill so we could ride down on that milk cart, and you had to stand up. It was kind of precarious, but we thought it was fun, and sometimes he'd saddle the horses and we'd ride, or he had a buggy, an old buggy like with the fringe with the surrey on top or whatever, and he'd hitch up the horse to that, and we'd ride all around the hillside up there and just had lots of fun. We'd go down to the old mill. After I was older, probably 10 or 11, 12, somewhere along in there, we started walking out further. We had limits to where we could go. We could go as far as the old mill and as far up the hill as the cemetery. And that was it.
So the mill was out of operation, but people would still go down there and climb on the wheel and stuff? Or what was it?
Possibly. I guess some kids did climb on the wheel. I never did. I was too scared. It was too high. We'd climb on the foundation and took lots of pictures and watched for snakes down in the creek, which there was plenty of those.
Tell me about your memories of going to school in Cane Hill.
Well, I started first grade there and went through halfway through the 5th grade. They moved us to Lincoln in the middle of it was over Christmas break. And we had an outdoor toilet for the first year or 2, and we had to go back up on the hill to go to the bathroom, and then a couple years after that, my daddy put in the bathrooms that were there till they started the reconstruction on it. And then we had inside bathrooms, which was nice, but we only had one toilet in there, where up at the outside bathrooms we had 3 or 4 holes. But let's see, they built the lunchroom, and I think it must have been built when I first started going to school there. Mary Cabbage Reed was a cook. My mother was a cook. and I think dinners were 10 cents. And we had playground equipment. We got a new slide while I was probably second grade, and we had a merry-go-round, and there was an old log cabin down at the end of the campus that was kind of close to where Dwayne Pyatt lives. And we'd go down there and play, and we'd play in the rocks behind the school. We called that the Rockies. And there was an old bodark tree that had fallen over, but it was still alive. And it kind of had a place you could go in, and there was, on the tree trunk, we had a little playhouse down there. And I don't know if anybody ever got stuck or not. I don't think so. But anyway, it was real neat. We had plays upstairs in the auditorium, and the community played rook up there in the auditorium about once a month, I guess, maybe more often. Whenever.
Tell me about the rook parties.
Well, they were a lot of fun. Kids, of course, we didn't play rook. We probably kind of ran wild and bothered everybody, I guess, or sat still, I don't remember. But there was probably 8 or 10 tables. There was a lot of people that came to the rook parties, and I think everybody brought a dessert or snack or something, and we just had a good time. But,
Tell me, what years was that in, the rook parties?
well, it was before we moved to Lincoln, so it would have been in the early 50s. We moved to Lincoln, I think, in 56.
What stores or businesses do you remember in Cane Hill when you were living here in the early days?
Wallace Yates had a store, I guess, in this building, and Shaker had the post office in one corner. And then after the Jenkins came, Ellis put a store in here, and then later he moved it over to the old bank building. And we had a spit and whittle club that sat on the benches out front, and there was probably 5 or 6 old men that sat out there and chewed their tobacco, and they'd spit out their whatever, and they'd talk about everything, and everybody, they knew all the latest tales. Sometimes you got to where my grandmother didn't like to walk around in front of them because they were just all sitting there doing nothing. And anyway, that's pretty much it. He had about everything at the store that you could need. I remember he had a big candy display that was under a glass case, and it was all the candies that they weren't covered. They were just like open boxed stuff. They were pretty neat. Christmas time, I know after Ellis took it over, they had little gifts that whatever, and you could buy bologna by the slice. And that was always a big deal when we decided we wanted a bologna sandwich. We could come down and get a slice of bologna for maybe a nickel. It wasn't much. And we'd go have us a bologna sandwich. We could get pop and a candy bar for 10 cents. But then pop went to 6 cents. We had to dig up another penny. But I wish it was still 6 cents now, but long way.
You talked earlier about the mill. What stories do you remember old timers telling about the mill?
Well, not really a whole lot. They just talked about, mostly the ones that I knew talked about when they took it apart for the war effort and where the parts went, and just that it was sad that it was sitting there all by itself. And they had started a restoration association back in the early 40s, I think, right after they took it apart, but that kind of fizzled out, and it's been revived and fizzled and so forth over the years. But there still does exist a restoration association for it.
I know at one point the community here started taking over the maintenance and operation of the building, and the festival started here. And tell me about your role in that, because I know you were real helpful and real active in the group that was on the committee. Tell me, how that went down and what you did to help.
Well, it's kind of like if you say too much, you get in charge. And we thought, it'd be real neat if we had a festival at Cane Hill, kind of like the Apple Festival, blah, blah, blah. And we talked to several people about it, and before you knew it, I was chairperson. And the first year was really kind of rough, but we had a good time, and I did it for several years, and Bonnie took it over. And there's been, I think Leonard did it, Samson did it one year. I did it a few more years, and then Daleen and Tommy, I don't know, there's been quite a few people involved.
Haven't you helped with the committee every year pretty much?
Yes, all but one year, and I was in the hospital that year, so I didn't really do anything that year.
Now, how did it switch from being a spring festival to a fall festival? Tell me about that.
Well, it seemed like we get the most rain in May, and we had a lot of weather problems. And I think Bonnie was chairperson then, and so it got switched to the fall, which works out great. And I think then's when we added the sorghum and the lye soap and that sort of stuff. The first years it was pretty much, I think we had a parade and the crafts and breakfast in the college. I think we've always had that breakfast in the college. And we had a few food vendors and music. We always had music. So it's been growing. And just
tell me, let's talk about the restoration work. I know that there's been a lot of work in the past couple of years on college and on some of these other buildings here in town, fixing them up. What is your impression of that restoration of those projects?
Well, I think it's probably positive. Everything has falling down, and it's been good in a lot of ways. The only problem I see is it's beginning to look kind of like a ghost town. We're getting a lot of empty houses that look good, but other than that, the museum's fantastic, and I think they're doing a wonderful job on the college. But anyway.
What would you like to see done with that old college building once it's all finished and set
a community building, and I'd like to see plays done up there. Other people, the schools or whatever, could put plays on up there. And the community's done a lot of plays in previous years. Dinners, reunions, there's a lot of things that it could be used for.
What other stories can you think of, or things about Cane Hill that I haven't asked about? I mean, if you want to take a look at your notes, or if there's anything, any interesting things that maybe I haven't asked about that you just want to say.
Well, my sister, Sudie, reminded me of a mad cow alert when Alta Robinson had the switchboard down here. That was right after we moved to Cane Hill. Somebody had alerted her that there was a mad cow from Clyde coming this way, and so she called my mother and probably several other people, but she called Mother particularly because we were 3 small kids out playing. And Mother got us on the porch, and the mad cow came by and was just acting really weird, and he went on through town, and I think Louis Lindbergh, that lived where you lived, shot it, finally. But it was quite an exciting time. And we used to swim in the creek. It wasn't really very deep. We thought we were really swimming, but I don't think so. But there was a lot of snakes in there. And they tell me I got bit by one. I don't really remember. It was probably just I don't know what it was. It didn't make me sick, so I guess I lived through it. But anyway, after the Jenkins kids and Brian and Ruth's kids moved here, we had somebody to play with. Before, we were the only kids in town. And so we'd all go over to the creek and have a good time. And I don't know, I wrote down a lot of stuff, and I put my glasses on to see what I wrote. Oh, the big spring that most of Cane Hill used. My dad built a big concrete box up there to hold the water, and sometime in the 50s, we had people, he put a hose or a pipe out of it so people could drive up and get water, and there was a big drought that year, and we had just a line of cars practically all the time getting water out of that spring. Plus, it served quite a few households here, mainly on this side of the street, but it was a good spring till the county decided it was not good, and so it's no longer usable. It still runs down to the creek, but anyway, that good water is gone, and we had it at the school, and we all lived through it, so I don't know if gotta have my glasses. The church was a big part of the community, and
Tell me about that. Why was it a big part?
well, everybody went in town, just about, and we used to have skating parties, and there was several different size classes, and we had vacation Bible school, and it was just a very community-orientated thing. Mother didn't always go to church because of her being a little crippled, but she always cooked a big Sunday dinner, and we always had company on Sunday. Somebody would come over to say hello to her, and they'd stay. And then sometimes us kids would bring somebody over, and we always had a lot of company, which was nice.
Tell me some other things you did back in the day in Cane Hill.
Well, we rode our bicycles up and down the road. They paved the road in the early 50s. I'm not sure exactly when, but before they paved it, it was just gravel. And after they paved it, and we grew up a little, we had bicycles, and we rode up and down the road a jillion times a day, and went to the store and get a soda pop and a candy bar, and we stayed outside. We didn't have a TV right away. I don't remember what year we got one, but you know, we were just outside kids. We had a swing set, so we played on that some, and we went and visited the old people, and we would stay and talk and listen to them, and sometimes they'd have cookies and they'd give us a cookie, and we just heard all kinds of stories, you know. And Conrad Russell was a great historian. He told all about the Wright murders and the hangings and history of different people. And then there was Booth Campbell that sat up on the hill and played his banjo, and we could all hear him in Cane Hill. And he went walking by the yard one day, going to the mail, I guess, and he was kind of contrary in a way, but he aggravated a dog we had, but he also kind of aggravated us. I was outside in the yard playing, and I had a turtle out there that I was kind of playing with. Well, the turtle bit me on the finger, And I was going, you know, and I had the turtle hanging from my finger. And he walked by and he said, "Won't turn loose till it thunders." And just like to kill me, I went running inside to Mother, and the turtle finally let loose. But anyway, he scared me big time. But he was quite a character, I think. And anyway, it was a good family. After Peggy Vaught and her husband moved back, and then Doorbell and Murray and Susan, why, it was different, but still family.